My name is Rebecca Cruz. It's good to see you all here. I'm the Deputy Director of the South Dakota Arts Council. And I'm just helping Peter with this session. I'm the staff assist here. And I want to introduce Peter and the work that he's doing. So this session is called Watering the Seeds of Creativity. Peter Strong is the founder and executive director, is that the right title, of Racing Magpie. And the learning objectives today for this session are to learn about the Waters process of disrupting philanthropy by distributing $3 million within the upper Midwest region through a new way of giving based in very specific values. Also, to deepen your understanding about how philanthropy is and can be harmful to BIPOC artists and organizations and the field as a whole, and some of the changes that could be taking place to address that harm. And to recognize your roles in pushing for this systemic change in philanthropy to the arts and culture in our region. So this session is 75 minutes long, and after that there's a networking break, followed by another series of breakout sessions. And as a brief reminder, we just want to ask you all to please keep your cell phones silenced and during the presentation and during the Q&A time. If you have questions, I'll have the microphone to be passing around. We're also presenting this session virtually, so we ask that you do wait for the mic so that everybody can hear what's going on, the people who are joining us online as well. And by the way, welcome to everybody who's joining us online. So you'll find some more information about tech support in your registration materials if you're having any trouble. We'll definitely try to get your questions included in the Q&A if you're joining us virtually. So thanks everybody, and take it away, Peter.
Thanks a lot, Rebecca. I also want to extend my the regrets of my co-presenter, Candy, who's not going to be able to join us live today, but they're trying really hard to put together a digital presentation that I'll put into the presentation. They're navigating some family emergencies right now, so you're stuck with me for the whole presentation. My apologies. And I'm horrible at jokes, but I mean, sorry, I really got to get back into this here. I only feel comfortable with a camera on me. I'm going to talk to this instead of all of you, sorry. Got to get out of that habit. But yeah, as Rebecca said, my name's Peter Strong. I am director of Racing Magpie here in Rapid City. I've been working here in Western South Dakota and in Indian country supporting Native artists. Thank you. I moved here in 2005 to be the director of the Heritage Center down at Red Cloud Indian School, and I've been here ever since. But I'm here today as an artist practitioner, arts administrator, to talk about this program called The Waters that I was involved with for the last 2 years. To give you a little bit of background on The Waters, it stemmed out of ArtPlace, which some of you may be familiar with. Thank you. That was a 10-year initiative, national initiative, supporting creative placemaking across the United States and I believe the U.S. territories as well. But one of their last programs was called Local Control, Local Fields, and the idea of that was what happens when all of this philanthropic money is actually given to a region, to a place, and that artists and arts practitioners from that area get a chance to collectively figure out what to do with those funds. What does that mean? How would that change the way money is given, the way the arts are supported in the region, in the country? What would that look like? So between May 29th and August 2020, they started out in the city of Philly, the state of Massachusetts, Central Appalachia, the San Joaquin Valley of California, and then we were invited to be part of the what was called the Upper Midwest Assembly, which included the footprint of North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and the 23 Native nations that share that geography. It is a people-powered process. The idea is that the practitioners who do the work from different vantage points in the community would have a better sense of where would that money be best used and best utilized and have the most impact as well. So this all began for us in March 2020, and the way they selected 20 people in our region was, I think the ArtPlace staff had met. They chose 10 people they had met across the region, and then they asked those people to bring someone else in, and that made up the 20 people who did the work. And so these were the 20 folks that came together starting in March of 2020. That's a pretty wild time, right? Like the other assemblies that had this chance to come together in person and actually have these sessions together. But we had to, as Laura was saying, we had to pivot as well. And we started virtually, and we continued on for the entire 2 years virtually, meeting weekly, gathering together. This was a nice equal mix between North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesotans. There was a facilitation team from the Twin Cities, and then Mara Cuffey was a staff member, was the head of the local control, local fields program there. And this is just you'll recognize maybe a few names. This is performing artists, this is visual artists, this is arts administrators. These are people in urban areas, people in rural areas, grant writers, all kinds of different people that were involved. So it was an incredible group of people. We met weekly. We came up with what was our big vision from the start. And because the idea of this was to be transformative, we realized pretty early, kind of a scary thing is that we didn't have to worry about some of the restrictions that we all hear a lot from foundations and funders a lot of the time, especially government, but also, private foundations have a lot of restrictions on money. And here we were basically we were told, here's $3 million. What are you going to do with it? And how are you going to make that impact this huge physical area? So they talked about paradigm shifting, people-powered process. And what we decided to do was we really recognized that across the entire region, BIPOC artists, and so that's Black, Indigenous people and people of color artists and culture bearers, have been left out of these systems for generations, right? Long before any of us were here, these systems just didn't quite engage with them, or there's a track record of them not getting funding for many, many years. So we decided to center there and see where things went. During that, of course, spring of 2020, a lot more awareness came to BIPOC folks and systemic issues through the racial uprising and in the wake of the murder of George Floyd too, and that really impacted our decision making as well. And a lot of what we decided we wanted to do was support the communities that are already doing the work. How do we do that? How do we disrupt traditional grant making, where you've got to know the right words, you've got to write a good application, you've got to have the capacity to do those things. And we wanted to move money. We realized like this money needs to be out in community, not sitting in a bank account for years and years and years. So how do we do that? One thing we were lucky enough to have, and we really encouraged ourselves to take, was give ourselves grace, give ourselves time to really think this through as a group. Get so far, go home, think about it, come back, discuss it, dig a little deeper than we had space to dig a little deeper than a lot of places can, and how do we move away from like a more bigger, faster mentality that's part of white supremacy culture and really look at our artists and our communities across the region and support them. So that was 20 of us. We spent from March 2020 through the end of the year navigating and doing a lot of the major design of our gift-making project, centering our values, But we also realized that that was a lot of heavy lifting for 20 people. And, you know, the artists were struggling with the pandemic and figuring out how to navigate. So how do we move forward? We all collectively decided to bring that down to a group of 7. And how do we start watering? The idea was we've planted some seeds, and I'll get to our gift making later. We'd already put out a small percentage of our funding. So who's going to water those seeds? Who's going to try and move this forward? And it needed to be a little more nimble. So I was lucky enough to be asked to be part of this group of 7 to form this core. We chose it based on like imagery and impact of ideas and the dreams we all had, and who had time to do this and space to bring this into their life and move forward with that. We also realized that we needed a little more communications. We needed to let the world know a little bit what we did. So we hired Christina Vang of La Bang Studio out of the Twin Cities to create our branding, graphic design, build a website, which I hope you'll visit later on, and really put together some visuals that connect the work we were doing. And we have 3 from Minnesota, 2 from South Dakota, and 2 from North Dakota in the waters there. One of the collaboration process that we really centered is one that Racing Magpie kind of brought to the table, but it really grew and people identified with it, which is how do we do this by being a good relative or be in relationship with people, not just focus on the money, but how do we go deeper than that, right? Like who are the artists doing this work? How do we reach them? Who knows better than we do, right? Like decenter ourselves in the process too. And we wanted these relationships to go on, even once this chunk of money was gone. How do those relationships continue past this funding? I mean, here in South Dakota, we're a big state and we're a small state at the same time, right? We really rely on relationships with each other. We wanted to try and navigate the idea of gatekeeping in philanthropy. You know, just a few funding organizations that really have the power, and some of them flex those muscles pretty heavily. So how do we move beyond that? How do we, again, decenter ourselves? We also wanted to build capacity and then stack resources to support Black, Indigenous, people of color artists and culture bearer work in every way possible. So there's money, but then how do we create a network and communications resources? Like, how do we do that in a way with a finite amount of money? So those were things we were kind of navigating as we move forward. So our vision and mission, as any good nonprofit folks do, we tried to start there. Our vision was to radically transform a paradigm of giving from a scarcity economic model to one of abundance and cooperation. So stop worrying about what we don't have and really look at the strength of our community and our arts and our culture and our community. And we envisioned funding and resources that would continue to build communities with unrestricted funding. We really thought about, what if elder beadworkers or culture bearers or story weavers had just as much access to funding as the white-led arts agencies here in the state that have been around forever that get a lot of funding? Like, what would that look like if the common artist had the same access to funding? So how might we do that? And that was the big vision. And the mission is, again, propelling the philanthropic field to change how it redistributes funding and prioritizing artists, BIPOC artists, culture bearers who've been historically exploited. Traditional competitive grant processes and systems make sustaining, let alone applying, out of reach for a lot of artists. And we really urgently centered land, identity, healing, and time, recognizing that it's the land and the people grounded in cultural power who make up the field of creative placekeeping, not necessarily the organizations. So like, how do we start moving through this process together? We also created a set of values, and we spent a lot of time on this and realizing that we wanted to really create these values that we could make all our decisions. We could base all our decisions on these values. And again, that we're forward thinking as well. We wanted to mend the connective tissue, deepen the roots of relationship, take risks. And we wanted to seek reconciliation in our community as well. So these are the values that we chose. We wanted to center Black, Indigenous, people of color-led organizations and then artists. We wanted to be rooted in belongingness and relatedness. Centering in tactics for decolonization, anti-oppression, reparations. Center projects and artists who were about healing and risk-taking and trust-building. Make sure that everything was artist-centered and narrative-building. How do we center those artists to shift the narrative and take the lead in that? And then this last one is one that I really sat with for a long time, but ensuring that gifts do no harm. A lot of times there are quiet ways that funding can do harm to people and to organizations. If it's an organization or a person who's never had a large grant, they may not know to withhold a certain amount, for taxes, and then that puts them in a harmful situation in the next step, or when the next year of taxes rolls around, and other things too. So we really tried to keep all of those 6 in mind in all the decision making we did. These were kind of, these are core components of the direction we chose that sprung out of this idea of values. But, unlearning colonial philanthropy, realizing that it doesn't always have to be the rich folks have the money, they only give us 10% a year, and if you don't write the perfect proposal and you don't know the right, like I said earlier, if you don't know those key words, and then you get your money and you have to go back with hands out, isn't there a better way we could do that isn't based in colonial philanthropy? Thinking about our community too, thinking about the relationship between the waterers coming from different physical space in our region, thinking about the communities that we represent, and then everyone in our geographic space as well. Blossoming connectivity, that's that whole idea about thinking about networks. What does that look like? It isn't all about money. I mean, here we all are in physical space together and talking and doing that. So how could we use this situation to continue to build those relationships? And then sustaining practice, that's kind of where we're at right now. How can we as Waters get out into the field, into the arts field, into philanthropy, and see if we can't help? We don't think we have all the answers, but we think this is a really exciting new direction for grant making, gift making. So what could this look like long term? We spent a lot of time on thinking about our fiscal sponsor, partly because ArtPlace sunsetted at the end of 2020, which meant they needed to get the money out of their bank before they were gone. And so we spent probably 2 months looking for a fiscal sponsor in the region that met all our values, right? BIPOC-led, does the work in community, tries to do no harm. And we just couldn't find the right fit. We talked to some BIPOC-led orgs, and they were saying, well, our mission we would be able to gift to, let's say, Indian country, but it doesn't meet our mission to gift to immigrant communities, or any sort of thing like that, or we couldn't take on $2 million. So somewhere in there, we were really getting frustrated, and I said, well, we shifted from an LLC to a 501c3 in 2019. I could talk to our board, I could talk to a lawyer, I could talk to our CPA and see if there was any way we could pull it off. And it was really a last-ditch effort, and everyone was really happy. So anyhow, we were chosen to house this work, and we're very humbled by it. And we were a little scared and nervous, and with our budget of $200,000 a year, $250, if it's a good year, that it was a big deal. But our board was with it, and the waters as well. So we stewarded those funds the rest of the time. So now on to the gifting. This was the fun part, honestly. This is the part where I get to tell you about like the different ways we rolled money out the door and got money to artists and to arts organizations around the region. This is just a kind of a scatter map of, and it doesn't have everyone listed, but just so you can see that we really tried to reach out across the geographies. We came up with 3 different methods to roll out the $3 million. And they evolved as time went on. The first round was really an immediate disbursement. I mean, I told you we started in March of 2020, and we were feeling a lot of pressure from our communities that people were hurting, right? Artists were hurting at that time, still are today. And because of COVID-19, the global uprising, we needed to get some of that money out the door right away. And there was a concept that came up during our planning that was, we are the people we've been waiting for. So we created this immediate disbursement where all 20 of those assembly members were able to distribute a portion of those funds, either to their organizations or to folks in their networks. So we sent $900,000 out the door by the end of 2020. And it went 79% of those gifts went to BIPOC recipients, and 63% went to rural, which that's another issue that philanthropy has in this region, especially, is they can't seem to figure out how to reach rural and reach BIPOC. And we were lucky enough to be able to do it. And then we took lessons from that, right? We'd learned a few things that we could have done better. We learned some minutia of rolling out the money that we took into the second and third rounds. The second and third were simultaneous. We called this one future building. We wanted to put money directly into artist hands to build for the future. Again, we actually used a nomination process that Racing Magpie had pre-piloted, tested. We had tried it on a small scale with the COVID relief funds that Laura mentioned earlier today. And it was this idea of our networks could help us find people in community who fit our values and and would benefit for the future by these funds. So we asked them to also look out into their networks and find, I think in North Dakota, they nominated 3 each, and here in South Dakota, we asked them to nominate 5 each. And then we trusted them. We said, okay, let's do it. So we were able to put an additional $960,000 out by the end of 21. It took, I think it was October when we got the last funds out the door. And they were just to recognize the work that people are doing. These are individuals who might never apply to the Arts Council, or we hope will soon in the future, but they may never have so far. These are folks who maybe don't know or don't feel comfortable applying through processes for like the Bush Fellowship or the any of the programs that we are all familiar with. But they're doing really cool and amazing and impactful work in communities. So we wanted to recognize them. For that one, 100% of this $960,000 went to BIPOC individuals. They ranged in age from 18 to 80. 40% of the giftees belonged to the LGBTQ two-spirit community, and 41% went to rural communities. Which we have, we feel pretty confident that those rural recipients that those dollars really had an even bigger ripple effect beyond that. And then our last one was really strong from the very beginning, was recognizing the disparity of funding that has gone to Native communities and organizations across the region historically. So 900,000 were set aside directly for Native-led organizations in the region. We again used a nominating process. All the Native members of the Assembly came together and spent a real creative time looking across the region and figuring out who's doing good work. And then we were able to offer them unrestricted funding to support what they're doing. And we chose organizations that follow the values of the waters as well. 83% of those giftees were rural. 2/3 are reservation-based. There were 4 gifts per colonial boundary, so 4 in North Dakota, 4 in South Dakota, 4 in Minnesota. And they all centered on like sovereignty, self-determination, culture, and language, but as determined by those communities and organizations. Earlier I talked about stacking resources. That was part of what we did. We actually were able to use some of those funds, and we didn't want to require reports, right? We all had to do a lot of reports and understand the weight and the time that goes into those. So we realized, let's double down on let's give them a little bit of extra money to use any way they want to think about communications. If they want to hire a photographer to come get really nice professional photos of an event, great. If you just need to pay an elder to come tell story about who you are, great. If you want to do a website or update it, that's awesome too. And then we helped connect them to experts in the field as well, in communications. And then another stack on that stack is we hired a communications agency as well. This group called Flannel and Blade is a really wonderful East Coast-based communications firm that has their staff have worked for that ArtPlace, right, where the funding came from, so they understood what we were trying to do and how we were doing it. And we actually hired them to run 2 webinars on communications for the giftees. They came together in 2 different times with feedback and like connected them to artists who were doing really great work. They gave them tips and tricks. And then, but they, all this stuff about storytelling and press and PR and networking, that just positioned those giftees in a place to hopefully be able to tell their stories even better, even when this funding ran out. So once all the dust settled, we of the $3 million that we were asked to use, $2.76 million was distributed to 117 artists, culture bearers, and organizations across our region, over 90% to BIPOC giftees, and over 60% to rural, which, as you know, I think a lot of us come from rural areas here, and we never see those kind of numbers, and we felt really good about that as well. There's our impact now. So this is a really good time. I'd hoped Candy could be here, and I'm not sure if she's sent a slideshow yet. Not yet? Okay. So hopefully they'll be able to send one by the end. But we did, in our communication strategy, earlier there was an image, we created this really cool report. You can download this by PDF at waters.org. And, it's a really beautiful piece that lays out everything we did. But we asked 10 of our giftees to be case studies, and each of them got a full page story where we just asked them, what do you do, and what did this unsolicited gift do for you? And we have 10 of those. We kind of like that they could actually print out that page of the PDF and then have a communications piece to talk to donors and talk to their community. So I just want to share those with you real quick here. So Frederick Edwards Jr., You can read about what he does there. He was really shocked when he was told he'd been seen for his work, and being recognized gave him, quote, the go-ahead to keep going with the work he's been doing with equity and inclusion at the forefront. And his quote is, "It's now more important than ever to bring the culture that people have left behind back to Fargo. From the connections and stories, I know I'm not alone in the journey of education, advocacy, and decolonizing my community." Lightning Rod Collective. You see they're an experimental theater collective of trans and queer artists in the Twin Cities. They received immediate distribution funds, so in that first round of funding that we put out, and they were able to use that to pay their staff and artists and allow them the ability to strategically plan and make decisions about their future. And here's their quote. They said, "We are a company tethered to our community of queer and trans people, most of whom happen to be BIPOC. We are interested in possibility and creation as we believe that transformative justice and imagination are tools for discovering a new and just world." Lakota Youth Development, based in South Central South Dakota. Culturally specific program that teaches self-sufficiency, healthy lifestyles, land stewardship, and youth development. Their quotes were, as our youth grow up, they begin to ask how they can live well in today's world and be successful as a Lakota. So we've supported the development of the first youth-led social enterprise called Honey Lodge. We center our culture and our way of life as uniquely strong, independent people to ensure that the next generations remain grounded in who they are. The risk of losing our language risks losing the deep meaning of our cultural ways, balance with the environment, and our clear connections to the universe. Pataila Owaiowa Wankatuya. I apologize for messing that one up. But that's a group of artists from the area who are developing a college-level Lakota-centric and Lakota arts college, and it's in the early stages. So they were able to get funding right at the very beginning, and to create a logo and to begin outreaching to develop this very important project. Native Artists United is based in North Dakota. It's a Native-led collective, like a cooperative organization to support Native artists throughout North Dakota. And after being gifted funds in the immediate distribution phase, NAU founder Holly Dahl regifted a portion of the funds to her co-op, which then redistributed funding to artists and culture bearers across North Dakota, ranging from helping an elder take care of her grandchildren, to securing financial support for an up-and-coming fashion designer, to supporting someone in their journey back to college to work towards a BFA. Holly said, "NAU doesn't seek power or control. We seek to receive and give support." So that's another organization that, even though they got a large chunk of money, they turned around, 90% of it went back out directly to artists as well. Justina Gill is from the Siston area, and she incorporated an organization called Nishto Incorporated, a nonprofit. And Nishto is a Dakota word that means concern for others outside ourselves, and they do cultural resilience work. Priding themselves on intentionality, Nishto feels that's what connects them to the values of the Waterers. Justina said, "I was taken aback, shocked, and so honored. It was such an amazing feeling to realize someone noticed what I was doing. Everything they do is guided by the people they work with, and they strongly believe in not about us, without us." The Gijigan Arts Incubator is an artist-led initiative on the White Earth Nation in Minnesota, and they seek to grow the arts economy within the White Earth Nation and the region. They partner with Red Lakes Nation's Four Directions Development, Inc., and they helped to design the Anishinaabe Art Festival, which is set for July of this year in Bemidji. They're doing some really cool stuff up there too. Earlier I said that the giftees ranged from 18 to 80. This is our 80-year-old. Grace Smith is a storyteller and an ensemble actress with the New Native Theater in the Twin Cities. Her funds were used to, her stories of boarding school survival are almost unbelievable and have to be documented. This gift gives Grace an opportunity to go back home to Alaska and reconnect with her land and people. That visit will provide a sense of healing and peace that quells the fear of remembering a dark past that's often overcome by strength, love, and prayer. Got two more to show you here. Shunka Wakan Tawonshpe. That's a horse healing and cultural teaching learning group in Standing Rock. And they said the nomination and gift was an answer to a prayer. And they received funding through Amplifying Sovereignty. The support came in at a crucial time, giving us the ability to purchase much-needed hay during a period of extreme drought in the Dakotas. The future of our ability to care for our horses was at risk due to the climate change. The gift gave us the ability to care for them at a very crucial time for our family. And the last one here is Ati Mapoka. Atim and her family were refugees, and I believe they were relocated to Sioux Falls, but now Atim lives in the Twin Cities and came to us through a nomination from Sioux Falls. And Atim said, the gift just didn't feel real. It felt like a scam because usually there are way more hoops and jumps you have to go through to get funding. It takes experience and resources to be able to showcase your work in a way people are willing to look at and value. It's sad, but this is the first time I felt seen for my work by just existing and being me without it coming at the cost of myself or my art. No washing down or whitewashing. Even when being vulnerable is so hard in this world, we must be able to show the complexities of being a human that is part of a marginalized group. And Atim is a musician and is working on releasing her first music video and a 5-song EP next fall. I'm assuming that's this fall, with singles and merchandise coming out throughout the year. And if it's safe, she'll be booking live shows in the Twin Cities this year as well. Last check on Candy's video. Anything from Candy? Check an email? No? Okay. So just real quick, who are the Waters? I know you saw the picture earlier, but Abdu's from the Twin Cities, Holly's from North Dakota, Kaz, an amazing artist from the Twin Cities, Michelle's from just east of the Cheyenne River Reservation, John's from rural Minnesota, myself, and then Rachel's from Fargo. We don't need to say more about that. There were some aha moments during this process, though. Like I said earlier, after that immediate distribution, it was almost all BIPOC, but it really helped us see that we needed to be intentional to really reach BIPOC community and really say it out loud and do it and not just assume that's going to happen. Somewhere along the line too, we had a conversation with the Appalachian Assembly, and they told us about their successes and struggles. And one of their biggest struggles was, just like we were almost did, there was just this assumption that you have money to give out, you got to do an application. And they tried an application, and it's tough. It's tough to manage that from the back end, and it really helped us let go of that and scrap the app is what people were trying to say. But that was a big deal, reaching out to our network and finding that out as well. I have a whole list of things that we learned, little things like language matters. we made gifts, not grants. These really were gifts. They're like, here's the money, go keep doing what you're doing. This isn't a grant where you have to follow a project and submit a report. Dig deeper all the time. We realized technology worked against us sometimes. A lot of our emails went to spam, which who would have thought that when we were doing that? But, you know, like someone emails you cold out of the blue and saying, we're giving you money, and it, you know, spam filters catch you. So the good thing was because we had done a lot of this with nominations, we had someone we could say, could you reach out to the person you nominated, let them know we're for real, dig into spam, you know, get our email out of there and reach out. But who would have thought of that at the beginning, right? We had to do a lot of direct texting and Facebook messaging and Instagram messaging and every way we could to get a hold of people and get them to respond. And then at the end, we realized, you know, we didn't want this to just be a one and done. We didn't want to just put the money out there and then disappear. And we recognized that all of us, all the waterers, we're all practitioners as well. We're not philanthropists, or we're not in the foundational world. So like, how do we take what we learned and what we did and make sure that those folks who are going to keep doing it from now on keep doing it, or at least listen to what we did and maybe make some change? One of the things I didn't know this, but apparently the Chronicle of Philanthropy is the place that philanthropists go to look. So we learned that you know, taking out a full page ad in the Chronicle of Philanthropy would be a pretty big like statement to make. And we tried to think like, how do we do this and still meet our values? We don't want to say, philanthropy, you suck, right? Like, that's not the message we wanted to put across, even if we thought that in our weakest moments. So we came up with, that's the actual full page ad there on the right. We actually said, do better. Philanthropy, do better, but it's an invitation. Like, come to us, let us talk to you, let us like learn with us was one of the messages we said. Like, maybe give us more money and then send your program officer to sit in while we do this, and we can learn together to move forward. We've been working since that came out in the February issue, and we've been working since February to build relationship and have conversations with foundations, trying to talk to program officers, trying to get in, like, you know, all these things that I'm learning about as we go. Like, how do you get on the radar of Ford Foundation out here in South Dakota? How do you get on the radar of these national foundations that are doing their own thing? And you know, that's been part of what we're doing, is building relationships to try and push for lasting change. Don't let this be just a flash that goes away. That's part of why I'm here today, is to share this out with all of you as fellow South Dakota practitioners, and ask you all to push funders to do this as well, or move in this direction. This may not be the perfect fit for them, but like, continue to encourage them to make these shifts. They're going to be better for all of us, and they'll lead to better impact and more impact in our communities and for artists. And then we published our report, Equitable Philanthropy Through Radical Gift Making. And yesterday, my colleagues John and Michelle presented at the Americans for the Arts conference in DC. So like, we're trying to get out there. I think we're going to be at Natives in Philanthropy in a couple months as well. Just trying to get the word out. Some of the findings that we've been trying to tell philanthropy about: do better, an invitation. The basic tenets of our work are there. I'll let you read those, but for these ones at the bottom, consider these points. Trust-based philanthropy does work. Get inspired by and give credit to local, global, and ancestral cultures of mutual aid and giving circles. Share decision-making power with local people and community groups through values and mutual trust. Scrap the app, scrap the onerous application process, engage people doing the good work through conversation and relationship building, and then ask them to tell you who else is doing really good work in their community. The foundation staff can then do the research, right? Put the onus on them, put the work on the foundation who have these resources, not on us in the field who are doing this work. One-off project-based funding isn't effective for long-term work. Artists and culture bearers need well-being, time, and space to build, grow, and innovate. A radical approach funds artists to self-determine how they do creative work and cover their living costs. Imagine what could be done what could be achieved if healthcare, food, and housing wasn't an issue for artists in the arts community. Fund community well-being over building a limited program. Stop funding usual suspects, recognize that it's often the institution or individual who already has assets and access to grant writers or foundations who gets the grants. Instead, increase the flow to hyper-local led groups to build capacity. Fund both arts and cultural work. Big impacts come from the people when we support local growth in urban and rural areas. Can you all scroll down my notes in PowerPoint back there? I don't know how to do that from here. Thank you. Just a couple more. Invite reflection. So are you, as the foundation or as the philanthropist, are you being a gatekeeper? Are you funding the usual suspects? Be self-reflective about that. Be curious. Who else is out there? How can you help them get funding? How are you reaching deep into the community to bring equitable opportunities to artists, culture bearers, and communities you don't know, not just the ones you do know? Reimagine reporting. Resist the urge to ask for reporting, but encourage and fund organization and individuals to use storytelling to describe their work and help them tell their stories. Cover those communications expenses. I mean, think about that as arts folks here in South Dakota. If you got a grant for operating, and then they said, and we're going to pay our communications person to come tell your story for you, work with you to do it. Like how incredible could that be from a practitioner standpoint? And then for the waterers, we said, fund us and learn with us. So we can continue our work as leaders in this method of philanthropy to make a transformative impact for artists, culture bearers, and community members to heal and prosper from historical and ongoing marginalizations by systems of oppression. We do see this $3 million as a regional pilot, even as we are thinking beyond the borders of state lines and trying to decolonize. Well, that's in North Dakota, we can't do that. How do we think about actual organic networks that exist throughout our region? And we think those lessons could be applied nationally. So give us some money, come learn with us, and keep doing more of it. I'm almost finished here. So where we're at right now is we threw it out into the world and said we're looking for another $3 million to do this again. But how do we increase the impact and visibility in another phase in a regional pilot that could be modeled across the country? We've been out talking to Philanthropy. I think we underestimated how slow those engines move in the philanthropic circles, but we're getting a lot of attention to the model, and we're hoping that in the next, let's say by the end of the year, we might see some version of this come our way, and we'll try this again, and we'll make changes and continue to grow and emerge. And then I just want to end, if there's still nothing from Candy, which is totally cool, just with this quote for the Waterers. I really appreciate you all listening. I know it may not feel like this has a direct impact on you all, but I think if we come together and really think about this critically as we move forward, it could really impact the way we can operate as artists and arts organizations in the region. And I think it's all about how do we not get bogged down, like Laura was saying earlier, how do we use this opportunity of everyone feeling a little ready for change, how do we make sure that change is for the better and creative? I mean, that's our world today, and centering land and the livelihoods of the folks who are doing the creative work as well. So I'm going to end there. I'm totally open to questions. Appreciate you all sitting here through this. And okay, I guess we do have this. So,
Peter, I have a question.
yes, please.
If we can fill a couple minutes here. Because even before you started sharing the artist quotes that demonstrated the surprise and a little bit of confusion and resistance at this process, I was thinking there must have been a lot of that. And how did you communicate through, how did your group communicate through that to really get people on board and enhance the understanding of how different and real this kind of gift making can be?
Yeah, it was funny. I mean, we really would get the people who you wouldn't hear from for like 2 weeks, and so we'd reach out to the nominator, or I'd email again and say, so this person nominated you, we're for real, or email them on their websites. And it was, I mean, think about it. If someone said you're getting $12,000, I'd say, sure, and now you need my bank account number, right? Like, it's not. And it was interesting, but I think it was that personal connection, and it was that idea of building a network based on trust and relationship that pushed right on through that. Because as soon as they got our email out of spam, they reached out to their nominator and said, is it for real? It was pretty straightforward. We had really high participation on the 2 webinars that were totally optional. We didn't want to put all that extra weight on them because they were dealing with COVID and trying to figure out just navigating the world for the last 2 years. And we had really high participation as well. So I think it was that personal nature of it all. And we learned internally, like, I think we were like, oh, it'll be fine. We'll just get people to respond and everything will be good. But then we realized we had to break it up and give people, just give everyone a personal contact on the waters as well. And then it went pretty smoothly.
Great, thank you. Lori has a question here.
Yeah.
Would you go back to what you said about the gift doing no harm?
Yeah.
And then address the idea of surprise? Did you have to follow up with people to make sure that they didn't feel like they had to spend the money in a way that proved they were in fact worth it? And if they didn't do that, then they felt, because there's a lot of trauma to get to that place that they're already at. So how did you ensure or communicate or work around this idea that somebody who maybe doesn't feel deserving has to get over the fact that now I must do something with this to show you that you did not put your trust in the wrong person?
Yes, I think we did have to work with a few people, and they, it is that I talked about unlearning colonial philanthropy earlier. We had to help some people say, this is not a grant. This is a gift. It's not for a project. It's general like for real. There's no restrictions on it. And it was just reassurance. It was just repetitive reassurance with a lot of folks. We did, however, even though we said no reports, we said we want to hear from you though. Like, tell us what you're working on. Tell us, like, what is this going to help you do? But we did it in a personal way. We followed up with phone calls or emails and really brought that human element into it as well. And it's so cool. And literally 1 month ago, so the funding was all out by November of last year. 1 month ago, one of the nominators sent me an email. A nominator from Sioux Falls said, this person I nominated just published this book that gift helped them do. Here's their website, and they're not going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you, right? So it was like people lifting up each other too, which is about community and relationship, and it's going to keep going. I mean, I was just in Santa Fe last weekend to watch my older son graduate from Institute of American Indian Arts, and they had artists set up around the powwow afterwards, and and we were talking to this one guy, and my partner bought a piece of art, and then she said, "What's your name?" And he said, "Jeremy Red Eagle." And my partner works for First Peoples Fund and said, "Aren't you a First Peoples Fund fellow?" And I said, "Hey, you were a Waters giftee too." And like just all these, it just immediately connected us all. And he said, "You know what, that funding helped me." I was right at that point of coming down here to go to come back to college. And that came at the exact right moment to help me do that, which for him was what he needed for his artistic career. And like just to be able to put a face to that was really cool. So does that answer the question? I got lost in people again. Okay. Are we good for Candy's? Okay. So Candy, again, apologized for not being here. I haven't seen what she put together. Candy was one of our nominators in the future building process. They're based here in Rapid City and do all kinds of amazing work. And then they nominated several other folks. So if we can switch over.
I am a descendant of Crazy Horses Band. My great-great-grandfather was the Whitman of Crazy Horses Band. He matakiapi, leampe tukile, iu hachante, washte nape chuziapi. Imachiapi wakia tuampi yoyampawi. Imachiapi chante makilawi. Miwashichi chajekile, Candy brings plenty. Hello, everyone. I would like to greet you with a handshake from my heart. My name is Candy Brings Plenty, and my Lakota name is Bright Lightning Woman. I am a queer, indigenous, non-binary two-spirit and single-parent mother of two amazing two-spirit kiddos. I am here in the Hisapa, our sacred Black Hills, and I am an enrolled member of the Oglala Sioux tribe from the Pine Ridge Reservation. And I am so grateful, and I am here to express my gratitude for being a participant and recipient from the Waterers Project. I am just so excited to see how this continues forward for our Oyate, for the communities, the folks in our BIPOC Oyate who need these fundings the most. I am extremely grateful that my cultural bearer components of the way that I navigate my life and my journey, the way I express my spiritual activism, and also how I have incorporated my culture in everything that I do as I walk on my path. And you know, I just can't even put words together to express how much this support is needed, especially for those of us who continue to do the work without the funding. You know, we continue to reach inside of ourselves to find our spiritual, our cultural, and our artistic abilities to create medicine. And we bring that to our communities because that's how we were raised. As a Lakota practitioner of my spirituality and culture, I cannot continue to create the medicine that I walk with without a source or resource of acknowledgement and support systems and networks, and ultimately mazaska, money. You know, so I am so grateful that, you know, all the things that I have done, I got to expand my outreach and the grasp, and even to have the experience to share and nominate other grassroots warriors who have been doing this work, who were raised to know that culture and art and spirituality are the foundation of the beauty that we create. And, you know, art in itself is absolutely a form of medicine. And to be able to express ourselves and influence others with our identities, and to be able to be supported as our full authentic selves. And, you know, I really wanted to be there today, but, you know, I got called to do a cultural protocol and to offer a prayer song to one of our loved ones who are on their journey to the Star Nation. And I am offering a glimpse into some of the work that I've done and some of the work that I have shared with the community. And, you know, whether it's food or ceremonies or, you know, creating with our hands, it's that path and that journey of reaching into our ancestral DNA at a molecular level to bring that medicine, to empower our communities. And there's so many amazing medicine creators and givers who, you know, only dream of something like the program that Peter is leading. You know, to be a fellow and recipient of the Waterers means I could bring buffalo meat to my community. I can empower others to reach back into our cultural ancestral ways. I can offer prayer songs and create ceremony and, you know, use our traditional infrastructures to create and build communities. And I have had a journey this past year, but, you know, to have this fiscal support means that I could put my time and attention into the work that I've been doing and enhance it and empower it, because so many of us continue to strive to make a better community so that we know we're putting it in the hands of our children and our loved ones and our relatives. And being a two-spirit activist, I encompass what it looks like to bring that traditional aspect into my daily walk of life, and to have that kind of support system where I don't have to create reports and, you know, write down, you know, just even just, you know, talking about it right now frustrates me, because I have been working in grant managing for years. And when I put that down and I chose to, you know, go back to my full authentic self and back to ceremonies and bring those ceremonies to a daily walk of life and reintroduce our Lakota culture to not only the youth, but, you know, people like myself, you know, single parent mothers who are struggling and who are looking for those elders and who are looking for those people who are leading us and guiding us. You know, they're not there, especially because of the pandemic and the things that we have been through this past year. I am grateful that my community has looked up to me to be one of those leaders. And oftentimes, you know, leadership, you have a deficit when you're giving so much of yourself to your communities, when you're giving so much of yourself to create that medicine, to help others to heal and to do those things. And so right now, you know, I am offering what I can today to continue this work and to continue inspiring those of you in the crowd today to reach out to those in your own communities, to reach out to those struggling artists and offer them what you have in your hands, and to continue supporting programs like the Waters. Wopila Tonka, thank you. And I would like to leave you with this beautiful song. Tonka shewa wakatanka hey ya ho ye wa ye lo yo hey tonka shewa wakatanka hey ya ho ye wa ye lo yo hey ha tung she ma ho ma ki ya yo ma ka ki che lo hey yo.
Great, thank you, Peter and Candy, even though she can't hear us. We have about 5 minutes for questions. If anybody has any, please raise your hand. I'll run the mic out to you. And Andrew, if anything's coming through virtually.
Yeah, we've had one question so far virtually, Peter, is just kind of moving forward. How will individuals and organizations be notified of these opportunities? Are you kind of continuing the same process? Is that all in flux? Maybe just a little bit of conversation around what your plans are there.
Sure. Well, I mean, right now we're at a place where our funding is gone. I mean, we're just getting the last few things out the door, making sure Candy gets an honorarium for that amazing slideshow, little things like that. But we're getting out and trying to encourage major funders to fund us again so we can do this again. So I would just encourage them to check out waters.org. We don't have a social media presence on purpose. Strategically, we didn't think that was the right way to go. So just keep watching the website. Racing Magpie would share things out too if we're able to do this again. Otherwise, I would just continue to encourage your other funders, the places you work with, to look at the work we did, look at our website, look at our report, and even if they start doing things differently, I think that's a huge win for all of us too. Even if we aren't funded again, I think that would be totally fine as long as they're changing too.
I'm curious to know how your conversations with foundations have gone, who are more traditional, and you're asking them to really think outside their box. How did those conversations go?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the simplest way to answer it is that the responses have been all over the spectrum, right? Part of what happened is we came out of this and started looking at what's happening in the philanthropic world, and we found out that there's actually a lot happening right now about trust-based giving, and there's a lot happening in the world, in the philanthropic world, and the foundations and the funding agencies that were involved in that so far are really excited to see this, because a lot of that's been theoretical, and now we can say, look, $3 million out there, we did it, let's talk about it. And there are some that are a little slower. I think in general, I would generalize to say that a lot of program officers are excited. I think it's going to take a while to continue to move up in those organizations and get to the board level and cause change. But again, there was a lot more positivity and readiness for something like this than I expected. I actually thought there'd be a little more pushback on us, and but like I said, it's already happening. So some are even ahead of us, and some are. It's going to take some time. I think they'll need to see 10 or 12 other foundations do the work, make the shift before they do it too. But I'm hopeful. Hope that answers.
You said you scrapped the app. So what was the application procedure like?
So there was no application at all. It was the nomination process. So there was we kind of envisioned, like, we know the people in the waters knew some people in the community, and we knew those people in the community had networks that went even deeper than ours. So we asked that first circle of people to receive a gift and nominate several other people, 4 to 7 different people in their community, to receive the funding, and that's all there was. We did have a form they had to fill out, just their demographics and just their contact information, really. But that was it. And if they had trouble with that, we called them and filled it out for them and did that type of work. And any narrative we asked for was optional. We said, what is it you do? Because we would love to know. And even just that framing of the question helped a lot. Like, we really do care. We want to learn about you, and we want to be able to build relationship with you. But if they didn't fill that out, that was okay. That didn't jeopardize the nomination at all. So really, literally no application whatsoever. Just, how do we get the funding to you? And we were in a position where we could do that because it was one time only, and we didn't have to worry about anything else. which was kind of really nice. There's
Thank
one
you,
over there.
Peter. Is there?
We planned ahead and we said, okay, in South Dakota, we're going to give out, again, we had 117 total gifts, and we just did the math and divided it. So we knew ahead of time. We asked a nominator, we need you to nominate 4. And we knew that whoever they nominated, as long as we trusted that person to know that those 4 fit our values, and went with that. So yes, at the end of the day, we had just planned well enough in advance that the money went out exactly right, but that's the way we did it. And if we have the opportunity to do it again, I think that nomination process is a piece we have to look at to make sure it doesn't get stale and we don't get bogged down and become gatekeepers that way too. We have to figure, that's kind of exciting to figure out how do we keep that fresh and make sure that a lot of different people and new people get funded each time.
Andrew, anything else from virtual? Okay. And I think
Thank you very
we
much.
got everybody in the room.
For
Thank
those
you,
who
Peter,
are here,
so
we
much.
have stickers. If you all want stickers, they just came in this week, so with the website on there, so you can go check out the website. But thank you all.